Enemies positioned themselves outside the windows. You were as good as dead.
Hello, as always, I am Cosmic, and today I'm going to be giving my first impressions to Hard West, which is an indie turn-based tactical RPG developed by Creative Forge Games. I recently got access to the preview build, which is only a couple of hours long, but it does give a nice insight and a slice of the content that's going to be available in the full game. The game is set in the American Wild West, but it's with a twist. It's essentially the Wild West meets Diablo, in the sense that it has a big supernatural influence. So there's going to be satanic cults, there's going to be arcane rituals, there's going to be monsters and demons to attack, and it actually creates a really unique and interesting setting. Now, in the preview build, you only get a small snippet of the overall story, and I really don't want to spoil that story. However, I will say that a lot of it is very interesting. It's a lot of fun. There's some really great narration voice work in there. And I think overall, the story, the setting, mixed with the game's graphical aesthetic and the sound, which, by the way, the soundtrack from what I've heard is fantastic, which is no surprise considering it's done by the same person who did The Witcher 3 soundtrack. And I think all that mixed together creates a really unique looking and sounding game, which keeps you entertained and interested throughout. Now, while the setting and the art style and the sound is all well and good, let's talk about the mechanics of the game and all the various gameplay aspects. First, let's start with combat. Now, combat works very similar in vein of XCOM games and Wasteland 2 and the old Fallout games, etc. It's essentially, a very simple but effective turn-based tactical system. And it works basically from AP points. Each character has 2 AP points, which can be used on using actions, attacking, or movement. Movement itself works exactly the same as the XCOM games do, in that you have an area in which you can move, and you can move even further if you want to spend both AP points. Now, what is unique about Hard West is the look system. Now, down at the bottom of the screen, you can see my HP bar, which is the red bar, but next to it is a green bar. Now, that is your look. Essentially, luck affects enemies' shots, so that if an enemy makes a shot, you have a certain chance to avoid that shot and a certain chance for the enemy to miss that shot. And every time an enemy misses that shot, your luck will decrease, meaning that you're more likely to get hit next time. However, every time an enemy does hit you, your luck will replenish, and then next shot you might have more of a chance to not get hit. And it works vice versa for enemies and you, so that enemies also have luck, so if you keep missing shots, you're more likely to hit next time, etc, etc. But it's not the only thing that affects hit chances, etc, etc, because flanking an enemy, going making if an enemy's not in cover and you flank them, you've got pretty much guaranteed to get a hit because they're out of cover, etc, etc. But what it does affect most of all is things like half cover and full cover, meaning that you're more likely not to get hit with a high luck. The combat itself is a lot of fun, especially for someone like me who loves tactical turn-based strategy. I think that there are a lot of unique things in there, like for example the ricochet ability that some gunslingers have, where basically you can plan out really unique and difficult shots. So say that you're in one position and the enemy is inside a building behind cover and you have no direct shot. If there is a metal object like a bell or a cauldron or anything like that around, you can basically aim your shots so that you ricochet off several things to actually hit that enemy in cover. And there's abilities like that throughout the game that are really interesting, provide extra tactical depth to the game. It allows you to explore more options, more ways of getting around problems, and it's something that really complements the way that the game is made. And I think that it's kind of like, if you want to imagine XCOM, the way that XCOM Enemy Unknown did their combat, add a little bit of fun in there, add a little bit of variety into the unit abilities, and you've basically got Hard West's combat down in a nutshell. And I think that people who have played turn-based strategies and people who love turn-based strategies will absolutely love what's going down in Hard West. What I also like about the combat is, from what I've experienced thus far and from what I've read about the game, is that a lot of the levels and a lot of the scenarios, especially particularly the combat scenarios, are all handcrafted. They're story-based scenarios. There's a lot of combat missions that have objectives. It's not like XCOM where it was just randomly generated and it's just kill all enemies. You have objectives in those battles, and it's about getting objectives as optional objectives, and it keeps you really engaged, and it's not just randomly generated crap over and over again. After the combat is over, you go into the overworld screen, which essentially works like Wasteland 2's in that it's 2D, it's top down, and you basically go from place to place, experiencing events and going to shops and doing out your inventory and all that RPG good stuff. There's a lot of text-based events in the overworld which are very interesting and do have various choices and consequences, and the game does feature a lot of choice and consequence even in combat. Even the choices you make in combat, whether to do an optional objective or the way that you complete a main objective, does have consequences later on, which is something that I think is really great, and I really like that things will change depending on what you do. But back to the overworld gameplay, I think that those people who've played Wasteland 2 will be right at home here. There's a lot to explore and there's a lot to do. Depending on your character's abilities also affects how you can resolve events in the world as well, which is something I really like. And I think overall it's very simplistic, but there's a lot of content there to explore from what I've seen so far. And I think in terms of both the combat and overworld gameplay put together, they've left a very solid first impression for me. I really like where the game is going. Now, the game is set for a November 18th release date, so I think that do be expecting a review from me because it's something that I'm very interested in reviewing. There's a couple of minor niggles, let's say, that I didn't like with the preview build. In particular, things in combat like having to click confirm on shooting rather than just clicking shoot, choosing my ability from the hotbar at the bottom and then just like left clicking a character or double clicking a character. I had to actually click confirm every single time, it's a minor annoyance, albeit that, but it's something that doesn't feel intuitive. Whereas XCOM, you just clicked your ability and then you could just double click the character that you wanted to attack, etc., and it would just do it. That felt intuitive, whereas Hard West kind of forces you to click down at the bottom and rather than just click where you wanted to do it on the screen. And I think there's just little things like that here and there that just niggle at you a little bit and cause minor annoyances, but there was nothing in there, especially in the preview build in particular, that was a major problem for me. I think that there was a couple of things that could be tweaked here and there, but overall it was a fairly solid experience. The last thing I wanted to mention before I go is the character progression and the way that works. Now, character progression is fairly simple in that you have a inventory and a character loadout, so you can use two weapons and put on various items such as health potions or nail bombs or etc. But the most interesting thing was the card system. Now, each character has the ability to equip cards. Now, these are from a deck of cards like the Ace of Clubs, Jack of Spades, etc. But each card essentially is an ability. Now, these abilities aren't just straightforward, gain +2 HP or have the ability to shoot all enemies in sight, etc. They also have downsides as well. So, for example, there was an ability where you gained certain stats, but it reduced your HP, or you gained an ability, a really useful combat ability, but you were vulnerable to etc. That kind of thing. There's a lot of variety there. You can mix and match which character has what, and it really allows you to customize your characters to basically be what you want them to be. For example, I started out with a girl called Cassandra who just had a pistol, and her HP was naturally really low. So what I actually did was focused on cards that would increase her HP and increase her gunslinging abilities, which then made her a pretty formidable opponent in combat. So I changed this character that was supposed to be about speed and kind of hiding and getting round characters, and I changed them into more of a tank-like character where I could just put her on the front line and she would take a lot of damage and also give a lot of damage. And I really like the card system that they've got in place, and I think a lot of the abilities are really interesting and fun, and you can, there's some things in there that you will really like if you take the time to gain those cards. And the way that you gain those cards is by doing optional missions and doing events in the overworld, and choosing specific ways to resolve things, and doing that kind of thing is really entertaining. But characters also gain permanent traits, and again, these are affected by the events that take place in the game, even optional events. For example, Cassandra for me had to the way that I could resolve a certain situation was I wanted to get this map, and this really rich guy, but he was hideously deformed, had this map, and he said he would give it to me for a kiss. So I let Cassandra kiss him, but then he actually took it too far, and essentially she was like really upset about it. So then she actually got a trait which was disgusting past or something like that, or disgusting events, which essentially reduced her permanent HP because I'd made the choices that I'd made. And that in itself, I really liked that, the fact that what happens in the game, even the smallest things in the game, carried on throughout and had an effect on my characters, and I really, really enjoyed that. So like I say, the game is out November 18th. I will be doing a review on Hard West, so please keep an eye out for that. As first impressions go, Hard West has probably left one of the best first impressions of a game this year. I think that while there are minor annoyances in the preview build in terms of its combat and some minor annoyances in the overworld, there's nothing major in there, and it's pretty solid. It looks and sounds fantastic. The story and the setting is really, really interesting. So it's definitely one to keep on your radar. And I know that November is the month of Fallout 4, but I think people who are going to like turn-based strategy over anything else really need to keep an eye on Hard West, because the game is currently priced at $15 for pre-purchase, but I don't like people pre-purchasing things, so it's going to be $20 on release. So keep an eye out for my review, and we'll see if the preview build first impressions actually match what the full game turns out to be. So thank you so much for watching and listening. Do like, subscribe, and leave a comment, and I'll see you next time.